Hello. This is Zach Spicer with JTNS. We're going to be talking about distribution stringing and pulling this month. So let's dive right in, shall we? So, of course, everything starts with a proper plan, right? Proper planning prevents poor performance. So, make sure we get a good job brief out there, make sure everybody knows what's going on. And, of course, the main issue with this is we're coming in pulling this stuff in next to energized conductors. Because that wire is being pulled to those energized next to those energized conductors, what we have to worry about is the fact that something gets slapped into those conductors. Now, the guys up in the bucket don't have that much of an issue. The guys with the pullers or tensioners, of course, on the ground can be a part of the ground path. So we got to talk about that in order to maintain safety all around. Of course, we want to have complete control of that line being pulled in. Of course, we got OSHA rules we need to follow, so this program will talk about all those. Many factors considered. Of course, we would like to cut the trees down, but we got to keep the customers happy, so trim them back, get them cleared up, get them out of the way. You know how pulling that wire in or pulling that rope in, it's going to get caught under every branch you can think of. Not to mention, hopefully, the supporting structures. Those will probably be taken care of simply because the engineers are going to step in and have those 35 Class 6s changed out to be able to support it. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the conductor and hardware. This is also a COM thing, right? So we're talking about the 268, which is a COM standard in OSHA. Make sure before you start climbing any poles, you whoop on them. Make sure they sound them out well. Make sure they can handle the weight of you plus whatever you're doing up there. Traffic control is always an issue. Doesn't matter how many cone signs, flaggers you got out there, people don't pay a bit of attention, so stay extra vigilant when you're on the side of the highway. System protection, we'll get a little bit deeper into that in a second. And then equipment conditions. Last but not least, clear and constant communication. That right there, we're going to really harp on it here shortly. Like I said at the beginning, proper planning, right? Good job, brief. Everybody knows what they're doing. Everybody's familiar with this equipment because, truth be told, we probably don't dig this stuff out but once every year or 6 months or a year and a half. So make sure the new guys are brushed up on it and know how it works properly. Then, as usual, if anything changes, we need to back up, reevaluate, hold us another little huddle and figure out what we need to do to address that. Part of this program, I believe it was Gibson EMC helped put this together. Here's some pictures of them, job briefings, documenting it, of course the crew signing off. Because we are pulling next to this energized stuff, well, the easiest way to do it would just, de-energize it. That's all you got to do. Fix the problem right off the bat. But of course, that's why we get paid the big bucks, right? Can't always kill it out. So whatever equipment you got, pullers, tensioners, make sure that it's grounded. Use your traveling grounds. Tie it back to the system neutral where is possible. And last but not least, if you can't ground it, make sure you isolate and insulate everything you can. Now this goes back to the COM guys with the 268. When you're handling suspension strand, that stuff has to be grounded until it is attached, sagged, and you need to wear rubbers when pulling it in until you have it attached, sagged, and grounded. Alright, so a lot of places just go pole to pole, keeps their COM guys out of rubbers. If you don't do that, if you run a bunch of spans, COM guys need to be in rubbers. Just part of the 268, going a little deeper with that. Also need to be restrained from upward movement. anywhere where you're attaching to a joint use pole, and a non-joint use pole where the line crosses underneath our power lines. Couple more pictures here. Ground's tied to the system neutral, a good ground connection on your puller and tensioner, and a picture at the end here of the running grounds. Make sure whatever you got, whatever your company policy is, when you are pulling this next to this energized power line, of course, like I said, if we can kill it out, kill it out. If you cannot kill it out, you cannot test it, and you can't ground it, you got to consider it hot. Work it hot. That's all it is to it. Cannot get around that. I'm talking anything 600 volts or more. Make sure everything's guarded, however you need to do it. Workers definitely need to be isolated or insulated. Get that A shot, one shot, A switch, whatever you want to call it. Hotline tag, depending on what you're doing. And then, of course, last but not least, the running grounds got to be on there. Couple more pictures here. They got cover up there. They're preventing contact. And then the other methods used, always like that. Note, real quick, pay attention. That fella's up there holding that phase up. He's not got that wire in that jib winch without something in between there. That's the key thing, especially with the new APPA. That jib up there, unless it has an insulated link in it, man, you're not supposed to be moving hot stuff. So make sure you got an insulated link in there before you hook up. Couple more pictures here. We got a tensioner to help maintain control when you're pulling this wire and rope in. And that helps maintain the proper sag when you are getting this in. You dip it too low, you get in the trees and limbs, might get some open wire secondary, down in the highways, something along them lines. So make sure you, good PSI, good braking, whole 9 yards. Go back to the APPA here real quick. The two-way communication, they prefer it to be a two-way radio. That way, cell phones, they've been known to drop calls, they lag a little bit, something like that. Two-way communication with that radio is a dedicated channel. Constant communication, headsets, keep your hands free and clear to use both of them. Two-way radio is the way to go here. Of course, help preventing contact. Positive control that conductor while it's being strung. Adequate tension. Make sure you put the proper set of rollers up there, guards, whatever you need to do. Cover this stuff up. Make sure that in case something slaps something, that's only for accidental contact. So make sure you gut it up, blankets, everything you got. This is not one of them jobs where 2 guts and a blanket will do it. All right. Over cover up, if anything. Of course, when pulling this in, you need to keep constant control of that stringing. Certain amount of tension. That way, when you break it and or you start peeling it back, you have good tension on this stuff, simply because if not, you're going to overstress your wire, overstress your structures, something along them lines where it's not designed for that. All right, throw the sag out of whack, you'll end up taking a structure and wire that's meant to be up there for 20 years and end up doing damage on it to where the wire, now the ampacity is not that great, and or the structural integrity of it's off. So you put this stuff up right and it lasts forever, right? That clip and crew, when you get in there, you need to have 2 structures between them and the conductor being sagged. Make sure you're working between grounds when you're working on bare conductor. Grounds need to be up and intact the entire time you're clipping in. All right. Most places, of course, don't actually clip in until you're actually pulled and sagged. You've got your hoist down on one end. You got the foreman riding up down the road, eyeballing this stuff, and make sure the sag's proper. Whatever the size wire, the length of the pull, that helps you with your foot pounds on there. But most people leave grounds on the entire time until they're ready to actually heat this stuff up. Now, them dead end structures, once again, grounds are going to be put on there, maintained until the jumpers are actually ready to go on. That's the last thing you're going to be doing, is pulling them grounds off before you actually heat this thing up. So you want to be able to go back out of your rollers, armor rods, quick ties, whatever you're using. Get that done. Go back, peel your grounds off, then you can heat it up. Now, of course, isolate and insulate, great. Help us out, cover it up. Best thing to do is ground it out. Of course, that helps with the fault current possibilities, of course. Anything accidentally gets slapped together. It's amazing how fast hotline tag works compared to an A switch. A lot of times, a lot of places don't want to use the hotline tag simply based because it is so fast and there's nuisance trips involved. But I've heard this. I like this saying. An A switch is for equipment. Hotline tag is for the guys. All right. Not to mention the grounds when you put on there. And that helps bleed off that static. It's amazing to me how electricity works, man. You can have a wire up in the air, electricity running through it, that invisible magnetic field coming off that wire, that other wire that you pulling right in next to it, not heated up to anything, without any grounds on it, that literally pulls that magnetic field out of the air and induces a voltage on that new wire. It's absolutely crazy how it can take something from nothing and make voltage. So make sure you put your grounds on. Helps bleed off that static. Keeps you safe. Of course, 269s tells us got to have these grounds on. Failure to do that, just in case a puller tension rig gives out, cable conductor gives out. Of course, failure any kind of equipment. If you've not changed out your structures, maybe you've got an old cross arm up there, you put a layout arm up, and next thing you know, something's breaking, something's popping, hence we need to have them grounds up there. That right there helps prevent exposure to everybody out there from that difference in potential, right? Now, tying your grounds to your equipment, actually, it needs to be a lug, what I'm calling a stirrup, essentially. Make sure it's welded on, all right? It doesn't need to be on the pedal hitch donut up there. Good, clean lug. It's welded on, no primer, no paint. That's a good connection point. Good, clean connection point. Make sure your grounds are sufficient size, good clamps, and tie it back to your system neutral. We got 5 components here. We're going to talk about the comm equipment, tensioners, bull line, stringing blocks, last but not least, puller. That communications is key. They prefer the headphones, highly recommended, of course. That right there, headphones with a two-way radio. That way you have a dedicated channel. Nobody's on there over talking you. No cell phone drop calls. The operators must be able to talk to one at each other constantly. All right, especially if you're you're pulling it, you're turning your tension up, you're cranking your PSIs up to keep your sag right. If the guy's not releasing the brake right, it's going to overstress this stuff, and or he peels off too quick. That, of course, causes a problem. Drops it too low, gets in the highway, right? So key thing is maintain constant communication. Here's a couple more pictures from Gibson. Guys using headsets. They also got their cages in front of them in case something breaks loose. Nothing's going to come back and slap you in the forehead. Bull lines, right? So your pulling lines. Most of them are synthetic today, but just like your digger truck winches, you don't take that winch line off and have it tested, right? It's not a dielectric piece of equipment. Same thing here. Yeah, brand new, untouched first run, probably no kind of issue if it accidentally got into something. But it's not going to last like that at all. It's going to get dirty, nasty, dingy, whatever. And you can just consider that bull line a conductor, right? It's going to track that electricity. So make sure, cover up, isolate. Don't let that bull line get into anything. Picture the bull line on the left. Also, whatever bull line you're using, that Kellum grip or that Chinese finger trap grip, whatever you can call it, make sure it's got a swivel in there. That way it's not going to start rolling on you as it comes off that spool. You all know what happens when you get that kink in that rope or a kink in that wire. You shouldn't have to use a roll of tape to keep that grip on that rope or that wire. All right, goes back to the right Kellum grip. Make sure you secure the wire to the reel. I'd hate to get to the last 5 or 6 turns and it kind of slip out on me, So make sure you steeple the far out of it and it doesn't go anywhere. Third item, stringing blocks. Now these blocks, I guarantee you, when you guys take them down, you take them down, you grease them, clean them, oil them up. They go in their nice little spot hung up in the warehouse. Of course, we don't throw them on the ground from 40 foot up in the air. And definitely not on the back of the truck and pile them up about 20 high. And then throw them in a gigantic box at the warehouse. We don't do that kind of stuff. What's crazy about it is this equipment needs to be taken care of just like you take care of a gut or your gloves, right? These things not working properly will actually cause more stress and strain on the conductor and on the structure. So actually take care of them, all right? Grease them up, clean them up, make sure the sheaves are in good working order. Use the right kind of bolts, right kind of angles. Make sure your gatekeepers latch in and lock in. That way this stuff can't flop out. There's some loss values in here with these stringing blocks that I'm amazed by, to be honest with you. That this stuff right here, they wanted 1 to 3% loss on these blocks, which means it's free spinning, right? It shouldn't be causing the wire to sort of drag, it's sort of just actually pulling over the sheave and not the sheave rolling, right? So this stuff actually is accumulative, which means that if you have bad blocks on a certain number of poles, it adds up and adds that stress and strain to the wire and the structures. Something like this, a 2% loss over 15 structures is a 30% total loss when that pull happens. That's a pretty big number, but if you just bump it up to 4%, that's a 60% loss over this, right? I mean, that adds up really fast. So you make sure to take care of this equipment, it'll take care of you. Make sure you keep your puller level. Put your outriggers down, chalk it up. Shouldn't be scooching along the ground. That level winding device, make sure it's working properly. A little electric motor keeps that thing pulling back and forth to keep a level wind on your rope coming back in. That helps them keep it bunching up. A lot of strain gets put on it, sort of friction welds itself together. That stuff doesn't happen as bad when you actually level wind it. Pullers should have some kind of method for slowing down this stuff, right? Either brake that tensioner, turn up the PSI to keep it slower. That operator should be able to make minute changes to this pulling force, all right? This right here should be a nice, smoothly controlled pull. It shouldn't be something that you sort of freewheel it and it just peels off as fast as you can, as fast as you can go, right? Fast as the guy can run or the four-wheeler can drive. You need to maintain control of this. Of course, going back to what OSHA recommends, right? Good plan, follow it. Make sure you choose the right type of puller, right type of tensioner. Adequate training, key thing, adequate training on this equipment. Like I said, most of this stuff doesn't get really pulled out from the warehouse but once every 6 months to 18 months. A lot of people come in and out. Make sure the new guys are familiar with this, understand how to run it, know how to stop it, right? That's one of the main things. Last but not least, that constant communication. Make sure that tensioner and puller, them two fellas are constantly talking, preferably two-way radio with a headset. Keep both hands free to work them brakes, work them knobs to be able to control that tension. So we've talked a little bit about stringing techniques, safety, and grounding. If you need any more help, holler at the manufacturer of that equipment. Guaranteed they'd be happy to send somebody down to give you a little walkthrough, a couple hours, and maybe even get lucky and talk them into taking lunch, fellas. It's always a good idea to try that. Of course, we'd like to special thanks to Gibson EMC, help out in this presentation with the photos and everything like that. Hope this right here has helped brighten up your day a little bit, help inform you a little bit about stringing and pulling. Thank you. Have a wonderful day.